Welcome everyone. We have Brian Childress with us today, who is a seasoned technical advisor with 15 years of experience, and he has helped companies transform complex tech stacks into scalable, efficient platforms. And with that, Brian, over to you. Really looking forward to this one.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it. Yeah, today I'd love to share with you all my five-step tech stack audit, understanding the complex. Really, a lot of my career has been built around taking the complex and making it simple so that anyone in the organization can understand. And this is part of how I do that. So my name is Brian Childress. I'm located just outside of Richmond, Virginia, just south of DC. And as you heard, I've been in technology for almost 20 years, serving as a fractional CTO and technical advisor for startups everywhere from the very beginning stages into Series A and Series B, working with companies doing multiple millions of revenue every year. So this is an exciting time because this is a framework that I've put together through working with a lot of different organizations. Typically, I come into an organization after the MVP has been built. There are paying customers on the platform, and they're starting to scale, and they're really looking for ways to improve processes, improve the software itself. And this is how I go through and identify what are the areas that we can improve. So I want to walk through my five-step audit framework. But first, I want to look at what are the goals of doing a technical audit from the beginning. So from a fractional CTO standpoint, doing an audit like this reveals a lot about the software organization that I'm working with. First, it gives me a really good kind of lay of the land. As I come in, there's a lot of things already in progress that I need to get a good understanding of. And so doing a technical audit like this is a really good way to do that. It really helps me to also identify any risks to the business or to the team, which could then have a trickle down effect to the business. And I really want to use this as an opportunity to identify a lot of those things. So a lot of the process behind this framework is more to identify areas where there could be potential issues within the business and not necessarily just on the technical side. Really, the technology piece plays a very small part in the overall outcome of this particular audit. And then, of course, I'm always looking for areas that we can improve as organizations grow, as software systems grow. There's always places that we can find new opportunities for improvement and efficiency gains. So I do a lot of this because most organizations that I work with say that they have a scale problem or a desire to scale. And I think about scale in three different ways. The first is our ability to add new users to the platform. And for many of us, that's typically what we think about is how can we add more users to the platform? And a lot of this comes down to different architecture and infrastructure. And in my opinion, this is largely a solved problem. There's a lot of concepts and ideas out there that we can, replicate and bring into our software stack to solve for being able to add new users. But the second and third areas are where I think most organizations tend to struggle when it comes to scale. So, second being, how can I add more developers to my team? Keep them moving efficiently and effectively? How can I make sure that the onboarding time doesn't drastically increase as my team grows? And then the third is, how can I add more features to the platform? So, in order to support more users, I need more developers to create more features, is how I think about this. So, a big part of the reason I do this audit is so that we can identify the areas or the gaps as it impacts these three areas of scaling. So the first area that I start is what I call a tech questionnaire. And for many of teams, this can feel kind of overwhelming. So for me, this is a 16-page questionnaire that I ask the company to fill out. And I keep this very broad because I'm not asking for their CTO to fill it out or an engineering manager or a specific engineer. I hand it over to the team and I ask them to fill it out to complete this. And one, this really reveals a lot about how the team communicates and how knowledge is shared within the organization. Because within this questionnaire, I've got questions around the product, the business, the tech stack, the processes that are used within the organization as they decide on what to build and build that software and then get it out to their customers. And so this tech questionnaire really brings a lot of information to the surface. So I really appreciate this. Um, it helps me to really identify knowledge gaps within the organization. There may be only one person in the organization that can answer some of these questions, which would create a risk to the business. It helps me to evaluate the overall organization as well. I'm going to look in here, not just for what are the answers to the questions, but I'm going to look for who's contributing, who are the contributors and the detractors on the team. Um, who knows the system most, and is it easy for us to find that information? Now, the second phase of my five-step audit framework is the process audit. And so a big part of this is what is the shared understanding of how the system works? And so the way I like to do this is I'll bring the team together, as many people as possible or as makes sense. And we'll do a shared whiteboarding session, say 90 minutes, where I ask for the team to help lay out processes. Just let's start to map it out, right? I don't want to reference old documentation. I don't want to reference old diagrams. I want us to draw out how do things work right now? And in that, it again reveals a lot of information. Some folks might think that the process is one way, while others think it's a different way. There could be complete gaps or bottlenecks that are identified as we do this process audit. And I think it's a really powerful approach to use a blank whiteboard in diagramming out what that process is as a way to really identify, where are the gaps, because we're not just referencing prior understanding. So I'm going to look at everything from how our requirements gathered and shared, how is code developed, reviewed, and deployed. There's a number of different processes within an organization that the tech team would be involved with that I want to identify in this process audit. Now, the second that I like to do, or sorry, the third step in this is to do a code and infrastructure audit. And I take a very similar approach with the infrastructure piece, at least. And I say, hey, blank whiteboard, engineering team, what are the things that exist in our infrastructure? What are the moving pieces, the components, the databases, what communicates with what, and how does data flow through the organization? And this is a really powerful piece, again, because it brings to light the shared understanding of who understands how the system works. Does everybody think that the system works the same way? And what I find is as the organization continues to grow, as people move on from the organization, the understanding of how things work actually, degrades over time. And so this is a great way to really highlight that. Again, all throughout, I'm looking for where are the gaps, where are the key person dependencies that there's, a very tight knowledge silo that exists within the organization. So it's not just let's create a new diagram for us to store somewhere. It's more how does the team interoperate, what information is there that exists, and what are some of the ways that we can improve that. So again, step one, whole team involvement. Is there a shared understanding? And then the next phase of this is I want to take a look at, does the process actually match reality? And in this, when I start to review the code base, I can see a lot of that in, oh, we talk about doing things this way, but when I look at the code commit history and the way communication happens within the organization, that can reveal a lot about does something match reality. And specific to code and infrastructure, I'm going to jump into the code base. I'm going to jump into their cloud hosting and infrastructure to look for, is it easy to understand? Can a brand new person with years of experience come in and understand what is going on? Because I have the opportunity to review things as if I were a brand new person joining their team, someone being onboarded. Is it easy for me to understand? Is it really confusing? Or is there a lot of duplication or unnecessary complexity? A lot of that gets revealed during this phase of the audit. Fourth step is around the team audit. And again, all throughout, I've been evaluating and looking at who is contributing, who is detracting from the conversation, and really trying to pull as many people into that conversation as possible throughout each of these stages. But during the team audit, this is where I'm really looking at what are the skills gaps? What are the areas where the team is inefficient or lacks specific knowledge or experience? I'm also looking for misaligned roles. And I see this a lot when engineers get promoted into leadership roles, or when you know the CTO, right, who is just happened to be the most experienced engineer, is put into a very impactful leadership role, is now expected to lead and not doing a great job. This is a great opportunity, and the way that I do this is through interviews, just letting the person talking with them. So I'll meet with folks across the organization, not just on the technical team, but in customer support and any other kind of key stakeholder roles. And I'll just ask open-ended questions. Hey, what are some of the things that you do day to day? What do you think some of the challenges are within the organization, within the way your team operates, with the way that you or your team cooperates with another group within the organization? And from this you'll start to see a lot of patterns that really start to kind of show themselves. And so that's where I really like to use this team audit as a way to not only continue to grow and gain trust with the team, but also as a way to really identify maybe there's an opportunity to move some folks around on the team. Now, the final step in my 5-step audit is there's every project and organization, there's a lot of similarities, no matter the size or the industry that the organization is in. But once we kind of go through the first 4 steps, there's important things that get revealed. And I want to then take the opportunity in this last phase is to really dive deep into what are some of those issues, right? Because there's a reason typically that I'm brought into an organization to do an audit like this. There are challenges that exist, and maybe I've uncovered the same ones or uncovered new ones, but I want to take this opportunity to see, where are the limitations based on either the team, the technical design of the system, other resource constraints. I'm going to look for that and then take this opportunity to really dive deep and focus in those areas. And for this, I'm really looking for what are the highest impact areas that I can focus on? What are the pieces that if we did this, then 80% of our work would completely go away or become much easier? That's what I'm looking for as a way to suggest kind of next steps for an organization. So really the audit is the very first piece that we go through. And then from there, we have a roadmap, a set of strategies for how can we improve things going forward. All right. Breeze through that really quickly. I do want to offer my playbook. It's 45 pages that walk through step by step how to conduct this particular audit, the 16 pages of questions that I ask every organization to fill out. All of that is included in this playbook. And if you'd like to have a copy of it, shoot me an email. I'm happy to send you over. It has been really informative and impactful for the organizations that I've gotten the opportunity to work with.
Thank you so much, Brian. This is very interesting. I'm going to ask you to turn off screen sharing if you don't mind. And just we're going to move into the Q&A part of this. And if someone doesn't raise their hand in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Does anyone have a question? Otherwise, I'll go.
Um,
Did
just
you,
one quick
Nick, go
question.
ahead.
Uh, I believe you guys can hear me fine, right?
Mhm.
Super
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. So, sorry, Brian, I joined a bit late. So, if you already like talked about that in your talk, then you might just have to repeat that. But and thank you so much. I think it was a great talk. But recently we have seen like a rapid like growth in AI and automation, right? So how do you think like these tech stack audits would evolve over the next 2 to 3 years? Maybe even now, how do you optimize the process? You talked about a lot about like gathering people around, talking to them, understanding the process, understanding the infra, but like which parts, like in which parts of these processes you leverage AI?
So I think there's a couple parts that I'd like to touch on. As far as the audit itself, I think the steps will remain the same. Where I would look to really lean in more is going to be on the process side and then the team audit side. And I say that because I think what I'm seeing with the companies that I'm working with is there's a big AI adoption within roles outside of just engineering, right? Product and design are really leaning in heavily with the UI front end focused AI tools. And so they're creating new applications, they're creating new infrastructure, and they're creating new dependencies that others in the organization need to be made aware of. And so that's where I'm seeing more of a shift is we need to understand what this other team is building and what level of support are they expecting. And so that's where I think the team and the process piece is really going to play a big role. Now, on the how can I leverage AI as part of this? I think I'm leveraging it in many of the same ways that I see a lot of others. And let's record all the meetings and create a transcript. Let's leverage some of these tools for better communication and diagramming. Let's figure out how can we communicate not only with the tools but with each other. I think that's where we always seem to tend to struggle is in that communication with others. AI can, it has an infinite memory. It understands, all the things that we said, so we can go back and refer to that so that our conversations, don't get lost. A great example would be in requirements gathering and sharing. It's a lot easier now than it was before when there was a lot of, type something out in the project management tool, hand it over to an engineer, wait for a period of time until they can review it and give feedback. That feedback loop, I think, can be really, really shortened with the efficiency that a lot of the tools are bringing.
Makes sense. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I have a question.
Yes,
Sure.
please.
I have two questions. Hi, Brian. Marcus from Arts. Um, um, Really interesting presentation, great content. I like how you tie various things together, right? It's not just isolated, how the different elements of scaling come together or how a team, technology, processes all work together. One question is, where in the process are you identifying business goals? Because they obviously determine in part where the highest impact will be relative to where the organization is right now. And then if you could share a bit more about what your favorite tools are, for example, about the shared whiteboard sessions and the diagramming and so on.
Yeah, great question. So I ask in the tech question, that first assessment, those 16 questions, there are business specific questions in there. And so that's where I'm looking for, does the technology that we're building tie into the business goals? This I've seen it reveal even from folks at the CEO level of they're not really sure what the business goals are. They have a hard time sharing that. And that's a great indicator of, hey, if you can't share it with me in clear, concise language, it's likely your team doesn't have that clarity either. And so it always starts there. For me, yes, I'm a technologist at heart, but I always have to tie it back to the business because I know that, the business is the one that pays, our big fancy software engineering salaries. Um, and then the second piece, I'll use, if the team has already something in place, I'll use whatever they have. But typically a Figma or a Miro, Fig Jam work really well. We're very visual creatures, I find, but I try and stick to very, very rudimentary drawings, right? Squares, triangles, circles, and lines can get me a very long way in communicating concepts with my teams. Now, one tool that has been absolutely just incredible for me in the last few years in this virtual environment that we live in is I have an iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil, and I use an app, and I will just draw in there, and taking what we're talking about, where we're typically moving hands and pointing, turning that into just something that everyone can see and drawing it out in a very, almost analog way has been really, really helpful in communicating with my teams.
Cool.
Very curious what app you use.
Notability is the one that I've been using.
Okay. And Brian, I was curious about what is typically the size of the client that you do this for, and I'm generally very interested in human behavior, and there's a lot of emotion that comes with the rationality. So I was wondering what sort of friction you experience from particular teams. Like you seem to be asking a lot of questions which should put people on their defensive. Generally, humans would go on their defensive. It would take a very mature team to sort of take in that sort of. I believe, but I'd love to know what sort of experiences you've had.
Yeah, yeah. Typically, I'm doing this. There's at least an established engineering team, so say 6 or 7 folks at a minimum, up until maybe there's 3 or 4 engineering teams or pods, however you classify them, within an organization. I've done similar portions of this exercise with larger groups, say 70 or 80, but this particular framework works really well if I've got 1 or 2 or 3 teams about that size. For me, I know that I'm coming in and asking a lot of questions that could reveal inefficiencies or people not doing their jobs or something along those lines. And so I like to do a few things. I know I need to build trust with the team. And so I will use my experience and credibility. I will use, just kind of addressing it head on. Say, hey, I'm not here to, interview you in a way that I'm going to determine if you have a job or not. And so I really try, because I have a deep engineering background, I try and speak to their goals, their fears, and really try and, connect with them on that level. Say, hey, I know it's super inefficient here. I know that you're really frustrated with the way things work and requirements are handed over. Let's figure out together, right? Give them some autonomy, give them some ownership. How can we improve it? And just by doing simple kind of connecting with another human in that way, they will reveal a lot. And you'll start to really, really see patterns in the organization where the gaps are, where the bottlenecks, where the tension exists. And then I also really want to maintain that trust. So I'll never, point to somebody and be like, oh, well, Marcus over here is terrible at this, and it's always his fault or what. I don't want to do that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess but I should let someone else ask a question now. Yes, Vase, all yours.
So two sort of one is sort of a thought slash comment, Brian, that when you sort of ask the team to fill out that form, it seems you ask them to collaborate, and within that collaboration, you try to judge how they collaborate. I was curious if you've ever given the form to multiple people, because that's something I've done a few times in terms of estimation, etc., where those sort of multiple viewpoints give me a lot of data. So that was something I was curious about, if you've ever tried that approach, because I think collaboration will reveal some team dynamics, but I also feel you might find, when you were saying different people understand the process differently. So if it's not on a single document, it might reveal more. So one was that. The second part is, it seems you're focusing on certain types of problems, which is more sort of team dynamics and, as you called it, friction and sort of issues within the team. And I wonder where that is coming from, in terms of, is that your experience, that most of the issues within teams when you come in evolve from that place? Because I heard that it's coming mostly from information silos, if you will, within the team, or loss of information, of people leaving where nobody really knows what's happening. So yeah, those two questions, thoughts.
Yeah. I haven't done giving the document to separate people. I will give it to one person and just, work with whoever. So that's kind of touching on the collaboration piece. In the interviews that I do across the team, I'll ask very open-ended questions. Typically, that's where hopefully I've had enough opportunity to gain trust as I lead them through the process, diagramming session and the infrastructure diagramming session, that then they're willing to reveal, like, okay, it seems like he knows enough about what's going on. I'm going to reveal a little bit more. But I would be curious about trying that, sharing the document to multiple people and seeing if there's overlap in the results. Um, yeah, and then I think for the other piece, I mean, from my perspective, technology is the easiest part of what we do, right? It's very prescribed. There's frameworks. There's a lot of examples out there. I used to say I can Google my way to a solution. Of course, now I'm using, whatever model has been released this week. But I can get myself to a solution from a technology standpoint. So where I often find the gaps that are created, it's in that communication piece. It's in that human interaction piece. And even if we look at how software becomes really, really complex, I find it happens for a couple different reasons. One, developers are bored, right? And so we create new complexity. I don't want to create the same CRUD application. So I'm going to say there's no good authentication systems out there, so we're going to rewrite our own from scratch. Or we need to be able to scale in the future, so I'm going to put in full, event-based architectures, even though I don't have the user base to support a need like that. And then the other place that I see complexity come into software is because somebody has a misunderstanding of something. So there's two examples I like to use. Let's say the CEO says, hey, we want to build this dashboard and we want the data to be updated in real time. And for some engineers, they're going to hear that and be like, oh my gosh, we finally get to use like distributed networking and, global caching and sub-millisecond timing. The CEO just is thinking, hey, I just want the data from yesterday to be updated when I come in the morning, right? There's two completely different engineering challenges. But if we don't have that shared understanding between the business and the engineering team or whomever is involved, then that becomes an issue, and then software then becomes more complex because we're solving for the wrong issue, we're solving for the wrong problem, right? And it always seems to come back down to that human piece, to that human communication.
Very interesting. I will have lots of follow-ups, but we have run
Yes,
out of time. So
I
I'll
said
Please.
difficult question, but one at a time. Nitin, I thought I'd give you the last question before I wrap it up, but
I think you might
only
be.
if you turn off mute, though. Sorry. Wait.
Okay. So I came in a little late, but my question from previous similar experiences was that how do you deal with resistance because of established ways of doing things, and all the questions you're asking seem a little disruptive and push buttons. And you did say that initially you build trust, uh, but ultimately, and I assume that you've been brought in because the business feels that there is something missing. So can you give some concrete examples of where there has been active resistance and somehow you have figured out a way to move forward in spite of that?
I think Brian is
Yeah.
just able to charm his way out of that, man. He had really good disarmament techniques.
That always
But
helps,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
I let him wrap this up with this. So
No,
good, good.
I mean that's my number one. Humor is certainly one. I do try to build a lot of trust and respect.
Okay.
I will lean more on my experience as a way to kind of garner some of that trust. Typically, I see a lot of resistance in your very senior engineers,
Yep.
your CTO. They're going to be the ones that are holding back a lot of
Yep.
that information,
Yep.
right? Which is means that they're also holding it back from the team. They're holding on
Yep.
to it for some reason. And so I'll just address it straight up, right?
Yeah.
Because my job is to try and move the project, the organization forward. And so say, hey, if what's going on, try and identify what it is, right? And we've all probably seen enough in our career where we can figure out like why is that person holding on to that information or resisting being cooperative. But at the end of the day, I don't have to suggest that everyone stays on the team. There may be
Yeah.
people that just are not a good fit. And a lot of times, what will happen is they'll either, whatever changes I might suggest, they may naturally just not agree with and leave on their own, or they may be asked, to transition off the team. And usually in those cases, then the rest of the team is like, thank goodness, they never wanted to say anything before. And so really, again, my hope is I can build enough trust that the team will be like, really the issue is this one person, or whatever that may look like. But yeah, I know I'm going to meet resistance. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Brian. This has been really engaging.